Hello everyone, my name's Fraser and today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favourite puzzles. That puzzle is the Tower of Hanoi. Now I first learnt about the Tower of Hanoi when I was about 11 years old and it's fascinated me ever since. So I thought I'd show you some things about it and possibly or hopefully spur your interest. So before we go into the rules of Tower of Hanoi, I'm just going to show you a couple of things that you will need. So what I suggest that you have anyway, because you are going to need to do some work, is you need a pen. It doesn't have to be a permanent marker, just a biro will do. A ruler would be useful, some spare paper, and also for the game, we're going to need some blocks if you have them, but you can make do with some strips of paper like I have. So I've just got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strips of paper, each one slightly wider than the last one. So what I'd suggest that you do is if you pause the video now, go and get your things and then start again when you're ready. Okay, so hopefully you've got everything that you need. Now I've got 6 tabs here, or bits of paper. I'm going to get rid of one of them and we're just going to use 5. Okay, so the game board that we've got is we've got 3 spaces, left, middle and right, and what the Tower of Hanoi, or the aim of the Tower of Hanoi, is to move all of our 5 strips or blocks from the far left over to the far right like that. Okay, now there are certain rules that we have to follow when we play Tower of Hanoi. First rule is that we can only move one piece at a time, okay? Secondly, it has to be the topmost piece in a block. So I can only move the pink or the blue at this stage, and I can't move either the yellow, green or orange. And the third rule is that I can't put a larger block on top of a small block like that, so that's not allowed. Okay, so with those simple rules, what we have to do is we've got to move all of our tower from the left hand side over to the right hand side in as few moves as possible. Okay, or let's try and do it at first and then we'll see whether we can do it in as few moves as possible. Okay, so what I'd suggest that you do now is, now that we know the rules, if you press pause, have a play just for a minute and then come back to the video, okay? Okay, so hopefully you've got to grips with the rules and you're happy with how the game works. What we're going to do to begin with though, just because it's quite a hard game to complete and think about the smallest number of moves using 5 strips like we've got there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for the really simplest type of tower, remove 4 of them, and we're now just going to be left with 1. Okay, so we're going to think, how many moves does it take for us to move this 1 square over to there? Now hopefully you realise we can do that in 1 move like that. Okay, so I'll put that back there and I'll get a second block. So now we've got a tower of 2. So what we're thinking is how we can move those 2 over onto the right hand side in the smallest number of moves. Okay, so if we think about this logically, if I go for that one to go in the middle, that one to go on the end, and that one to go on top. So I've managed to do that in 3 moves. Okay, now I'm going to increase that to 3, but what it might be sensible for us to do at this stage is to record our outcomes. So I've set up a little table that you might want to set up as well. So what I've got is 2 columns. One of my columns here is number of blocks, and what I mean by that is the number of blocks we've got in our tower. And on the right hand side, I've got the smallest number of moves. So we saw when we had one block, we did it in one move. When we had 2 blocks, we did it in 3 moves. So I'm going to record those values for those first 2. So 1 block, it took us 1 move, and with 2 blocks, it took us 3 moves. Okay. So hopefully you've got that sorted and you've got your table copied down. We're now going to move on to 3 blocks. Okay, so if I move my table out of the way, so we're wanting to move these 3 blocks over to the right hand side. Okay, so let's think, if I move this one over here and this one over here, and then move that one there. So I've got 3 so far. Then if I move that one there, that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so I've managed to do that in 7 moves, and I know that that is the smallest number of moves that we can do that. Okay, so I'm going to put 3 blocks. It takes us 7 moves. Okay, I'm going to suggest that you pause it at this point, and if you now try it for 4 blocks and even try it for 5 blocks, and try and get the number of moves to be as small as possible. Okay, so hopefully you've had time to go through all of those. You might not have got in the smallest number of moves, but it's good that you've had a chance to play anyway. So I'm going to complete the table now for 4 blocks. Okay, so I'll move my table out of the way for this bit. So I'm trying to move these 4 blocks over to here. Okay, so we're going to do this in the least number of moves. Okay, so I'm going to go like that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so I've done it in 15 moves, and if you got 15 moves as well, well done. You've managed to do that in the smallest number of moves. So we'll now move on to 5 tiles. Okay, so if I put 5 tiles there, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So we've managed to do 5 tiles in 31 moves. Okay, so again, I'm going to ask you to pause the video at this point. And now we've done all 5 different types of tower, I want you to have a think about any kind of patterns that you spotted. So maybe you could go through the moves again, see if you notice anything when you increase the size of the tower. Also have a look at your table and see whether you notice any patterns in the numbers that we see there. Okay, so come up with as many different patterns that you spot either in the table or in the towers, and how your moves progressed as the size of the tower increased, and come back to us once you've done that. Okay, so spend a couple of minutes just going through different patterns that you spot. So hopefully you've had time to come up with some rules. Now I'm going to focus on a couple of rules that I can see on the table here, and hopefully you've managed to spot those as well. So the first thing is, if you look at the smallest number of moves that we have and how they progress when we increase the size of our tower. Okay, so you might notice that when I go from 1 to 2 blocks in the tower, the smallest number of moves to go from 1 to 3, I can times by 2, gives me 2, then add 1, and that gives me 3. I can do the same for going to 2 to 3 blocks. So I take the 3 times that by 2, gives me 6, add 1, and that gives me 7. Same for 3 blocks to 4 blocks. I can times by 2, add 1, gives me 15. And finally, going from 4 to 5 blocks, I can times by 2, add 1, and that gives me 31. The second thing, now this is something that maybe only a few of you might spot, but if we look at these numbers are actually close to powers of 2. Now you might know about powers of 2. So powers of 2 are 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on. And if you look at these numbers, each of these numbers is always 1 less than a power of 2. Okay, so if we look at 1 to begin with, that is 1 less than the first power of 2. So the first power of 2 is 2. I take away 1, that gives me 1. Next one, if I do 3, that's 1 less than the second power of 2, which is 4. So 2 times 2, that's the second power of 2, which is 4. Take away 1, gives me 3. Next one for 3 blocks in the tower, that's 2 times 2 times 2. That gives me 8. Take away 1, and that gives me 7. And then 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 for 4 blocks in the tower, so that gives me 16. Take away 1 will give me 15. Finally, for 5 blocks, I need to times 2 by itself 5 times. Take away 1, and that gives me 31. Now, you might also know that the notation I can use to simplify that calculation. Okay, so when I times a number by itself for a number of times, so this time I've done 2 times by itself 5 times, I can write that as 2 to the power of 5, and then take away 1 just says that it's take away 1. So 31 I can write as 2 to the power of 5, take away 1. And for 15 I can write that as 2 to the power of 4, because I've multiplied 2 by itself 4 times, then take away 1. Same for the one before, that's 2 to the power of 3, take away 1, and 2 to the power of 2, take away 1. And for the last one, it's 2, but 2 I can also write as 2 to the power of 1. I'm saying that I've multiplied 2 by itself once. Okay, so at the moment all those equal one another, And you might be thinking, well, how can I continue that pattern? We'll make a prediction for a block of 6. So if I have 6 blocks in my tower, and remember that we made a 6th block, we should be able to continue our pattern. Okay, so from the first rule that we saw, we see that we can times by 2 and add 1, and that should give us our smallest number of moves. So for 5 blocks, I had 31 was my smallest number of moves. If I times that by 2, that gives me 62. Add 1 gives me 63. Okay, by the other method, or other way we can see that, we're hoping that 63 is the same as 2 to the power of 6, because our pattern always increased the number of the power by 1 and then take away 1. So 2 to the power of 6, now in our powers of 2, if I times 2 by itself 6 times, we get 64. 64 minus 1 gives us 63. Okay, so from the table, we've got those 2 patterns that we can see. Now, if we have a look over at our tower itself, I just want to show you a pattern that I spot, and maybe you spotted as well when we were doing this. So if I go back to 1, so if I've got 1 block in the tower, the first move and the only move is to move the top block to the far right. Okay, now then when I move to having 2 blocks in the tower, the first move moves my block, top block or the smallest block, to the middle space. When I go to 3 in the tower, to complete the challenge in the smallest number of moves, the top block has to move to the end or the home space first, and then when I increase to 4 blocks, my first move moves the top block to the middle, and then when I move to 5 blocks, the first move I make to complete the challenge in the smallest number of moves moves the top block to the end. So what we have is a pattern where the problem alternates where we move the first block. So the first block moves to the end and for 1, middle for 2, end for 3, middle for 4, end for 5, and so on. Okay, so we're going to make a prediction about 6 again. So since for 6 blocks in the tower, so since for 5 we made our first move to the far right, I'm going to guess that when I have 6 blocks in my tower, the first move I make should be to the middle. Okay, so I'm going to say pause there. We've made our predictions for 6 blocks in the tower. What I want you to do now is test those and see whether we can get our tower completed in 63 moves, and also whether our first move should have been to that middle space, and also test any of the other patterns that you saw in the previous blocks and see whether that comes true for 6 blocks in the tower as well. Okay, so pause there and come back to us in a couple of minutes. Okay, so hopefully you've confirmed to yourself that it is 63 moves that we can do 6 blocks in. I'll just do that now just to make sure that we can do it in 63 moves. Okay, so first move to the middle, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63. So we've done it in 63 moves, and that's exactly the number of moves that we said we'd complete it in. Okay, so we've come up with some rules, we've tested them, we think that they work, but we're not satisfied with that in mathematics. We want to know why something's true. So not only can we find a pattern, but why does that pattern exist? So I'm just going to do that with this times 2 plus 1 pattern, okay? So we want to see, why is it that when we increase the size of our tower by 1 block, the number of, or the smallest number of moves increases by timesing by 2 and adding 1. And you might be able to see that from how our tower progresses. Okay, so if I just go back to us having 5 blocks in our tower, we know that what we want to do is move all these 5 blocks over to the right hand side, and we know that that takes 31 moves, or let's say that it's 31 moves. Okay, so 5 blocks takes us 31 moves to move all of those over to there. Okay, so now when we increase to having 6 blocks in our tower, okay, we now want to move all of those blocks using the rules over onto that right hand side. But as we know, we can't do it like that. We've got to use the rules as we explain them initially. So if we think about it, what we want to do is we want to free up this bottom block so that can move over to the end. But the only way that can move over to the end is, firstly, we need to get rid of all of these blocks on top of that bottom block, and we need to have the end space free. So essentially what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to move those 5 blocks into the middle, okay? Now, we already saw that it takes us 31 moves to move 5 blocks on their own to any particular space, or the end space. Takes 31 moves to move them. So it must take them 31 moves to move them into the middle space, because it doesn't really matter which space we're aiming for. So if we say it takes 31 moves for us to move that block of 5 onto the middle space, then we need 1 move to move our bottom 6 block onto the end space. So we had 31 moves, we've added another move to move that bottom block. Now we've got a tower of 5 again, and we want to move that now on top of this sixth block. So as we saw, it takes us 31 moves to move that. So it doesn't matter which one we go to the left or to the right. But since we want to make our tower onto the right hand side, it must take us an extra 31 moves to move all those 5 blocks on top of that sixth block. So what have we done? We've had 31 moves initially to move the 5 blocks off of the sixth block. We move the sixth block and then we move the 5 blocks on top. So that was another 31 moves, and 31 plus 31, well, that's 2 times 31, add 1 gives us our 63 moves. Okay, so that's how we can see that why the sequence progresses. So we times by 2 and add 1 because we're taking the number of moves it took us to move the tower from before, add 1, and then the number of moves from the tower before again. So it's times by 2 and add 1. Okay, so we've done everything that I wanted to do, but now have a think for yourself. How can you extend this problem? We've already looked at extending the problem to having 6 blocks. You could continue it to having 7 blocks and test your rule again and see whether it works and see whether you can do it in the fewest number of moves. The other things we could do is, well, we've only had 1 free space in our setup. What we could do is we could increase it so we have 2 free spaces. So basically we've got 4 different positions where we could put our blocks, and we could see how that changes things. But have a go for yourself, see whether you can extend the problem, come up with some new ideas and test some new theories. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and all the best.